Welcome back to the PFF NFL show and an episode of the quarterback showcase here after week 5 in the NFL. I'm Trevor Sikkema. The man on the other side of the screen is Seth Galina. Today we're talking about 3 quarterbacks. We're going to talk about Derek Carr's performance against Kansas City Chiefs on Monday Night Football and sort of a bigger conversation about Derek Carr 5 weeks into the season. We're going to talk about Josh Allen's perplexing most non-Josh Allen game that maybe we've seen in the last 3 years. We're going to dig into what that was all about. And we're also going to talk about Aaron Rodgers. We all got to see him on the London game against the Minnesota Vikings. Didn't start off too well. Kind of came back there at the end, but what is going on with this offense? Why does it look so difficult? We're going to get into all that. Seth, how you doing, my friend?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. I appreciate the sports coat, blazer. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Looking very sharp, my friend.
I'm trying to class up this whole operation. I'm trying to be the guy that pulls PFF to the top of the classy rankings.
Lord knows it's not going to be me. I'm sitting here wearing a hoodie. Next week, I'm wearing a full tuxedo. Because I got to one-up you.
Let's keep one-upping each other. I
don't own a tuxedo, actually, so I'm not going to do that. So don't yell at me next week. You can still be the best dressed next week. I'll give it to you.
I'm trying.
Well, you're doing very great. You look very handsome, my friend. All right, let's anybody who's listening audio only, you're missing out. You gotta go to youtube.com/PFF NFL show. That's all I'm saying. By the way, we're gonna talk about a lot of different PFF statistics here on this show. If you don't have a PFF subscription, best way to do that, going to PFF.com, getting yourself a PFF Plus sub. Not only do you get to see all the premium stats that we're going to talk about here on this show, some more in-depth numbers for these quarterbacks. We also released in-game grading this year. So what you could do is you could take a look at PFF.com and the premium stats, and you could see the live grades as the game is going on every single Sunday or Monday or whenever you are watching the football game. What's going to happen is you'll be able to see those live grades. Then you can see them for 90 minutes after the game is over. We will lock them, and then we will go through the full review process to give you the official PFF grades the next day. So it's a cool way to kind of see what we're initially thinking. Obviously, the grades are going to change a little bit, but it's a good way to see kind of the underlying, who we think is having a good game, not a good game, all that stuff before you get to the final grades. But go to get a PFF Plus subscription there. Let's start off with Derek Carr. A man near and dear to your heart as a New Orleans Saints fan. They fall to the Kansas City Chiefs. I know you got takes here. They fall to the Kansas City Chiefs, surprise, surprise, on a primetime game. Chiefs are 5-0 now. 26-13 was the final score of this game. You know, it didn't feel close. Like, it just felt like the Chiefs were always going to win this football game, and that's kind of insulting for it feels like how much of a one-score game, or at least close or within striking distance this game was. But Derek Carr in this one, 18 for 28, 165 passing yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception. Just what did you think about Derek Carr's performance here? And then I think this will kind of evolve into, I'd like to have a conversation about Derek Carr as a whole 5 weeks into the year, because he does look better statistically in some areas, in some ways that I feel like we got to dig into. But what'd you think from Carr last night?
Yeah, I think you're totally right in the fact that this never looked like a game. And a lot of that had to do with the red zone performance by whether it was the Chiefs offense or the Saints defense when they got into the red zone. Missed the field goal, settled for field goals, missed the field goal. And really it was a blowout that wasn't a blowout in scoreline only, probably. So I think that's why. And it gave me some hope after the Foster Moreau touchdown that maybe the Saints have a chance here, but was not to be. I think with Carr now, and we didn't talk about him after the first 2 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
Just I wanted to wait out some stuff here when I was watching the Saints early in the season. And I think it's this is one of these issues, and I think we'll talk about it with some of the other quarterbacks that we're going to talk about today. But one of the issues with Derek Carr, as opposed to the guy he was playing against last night, and I don't really want to compare him to Patrick Mahomes, but the Patrick Mahomes type of player, where the issue for Carr is the fragility in how this offense is going to move the football. There's no fragility in Patrick Mahomes' game, no matter who's playing around him. And this is not a good offense that he's playing with right now, with all the injuries and the fact they don't have tackles and all that stuff. Carr needs to have a perfect situation. And if he doesn't have that perfect situation, which we've seen kind of the last 3 weeks, what are we going to get out of Derek Carr that we haven't really seen in the past 10 years that he's been playing. So you look at the first two games of the season, they play against the Cowboys, they play against the Panthers, and it turns out those two teams are fucking bad on defense. Like, what else do you want me to tell you? And that's a Cowboys team that had those two edge rushers. Obviously, they don't have them now, but they give up so much separation on the outside, the Cowboys. And the Saints really didn't have to do that much. It was kind of day one install Kyle Shanahan concept that Clint Kubiak brings over from San Francisco. And it was easy. Like, everyone's open. Like, you do have two elite receivers in Shaheed and Chris Olave, one of the best duos, I would say, of receivers in the league.
Feels
so
like
they're going to get separation generally. And the Cowboys are a team that gives up a ton of separation. So that was like a match made in heaven. And you saw how good that was. And then since then, it's just not been easy street. And Carr is going to have these fucking issues. Sorry, I'm swearing a lot because it makes me really mad because as a Saints fan, I'm like, like Dennis Allen is such a good defensive coordinator and defensive coach. And this defense, I know they didn't play yet well against Kansas City, but this is a coach that has led the Saints to top 10 defensive marks in efficiency for years and years and years. As that defense has gotten older in some key spots, and they've refreshed it with some talent for sure, but a lot of guys they're picking late in the draft have done really well for them. Guys that they've picked early in the draft have not done well for them. But Dennis Allen just keeps putting together a really good defense. And the biggest issue for him, and why he's going to end up getting fired most likely at the end of this season, as they're on a 3-game losing streak now, is he tied himself to Derek Carr. Like, that's his decision. He said, I liked working with Derek Carr in 2014 or 2016, whenever that was, and I want to work with him again. And it's going to lead to him getting fired eventually. Like, it's tough to find a way for them to figure out this season. If they don't make the playoffs, we said before the season, if they don't make the playoffs, probably get fired. It's trending like that now, even after starting the season 2-0. And so you get these situations where you talk about the interception that he threw to Brian Cook on the first drive. Like, there's open receiver. Like, there's a hot throw on that play to, I think, Chris Olave that he doesn't throw, and he throws the ball up and he can't get the ball out of bounds. And then there's a throw to Shaheed where you're like, all right, well, he throws into triple coverage to Shaheed, should have been picked off. It wasn't. Olave, again, wide open, probably should have made a better read there. Like, he misses tipped in a couple times down the field when they have a shot. And this offense, given the struggles on the offensive line, without Cesar Ruiz, without Aaron McCoy, it's like, well, like, one player can wreck the game. Jalen Carter wrecked the game against them when they played Philly.
Right.
And now Chris Jones wrecks the game against them because he's just not a guy who can, like, sit in the pocket and consistently make plays. It's very it's frustrating. It's frustrating.
I think I want to give some context to a couple of things that you said there as we continue the Derek Carr conversation. The first one, I'm glad you brought up the offensive line, because I know a lot of people who are going to be watching this are going to talk about two things in particular. The first one's the offensive line. You don't have Eric McCoy, who is an Pro Bowl type of center for you, so he's not in there. Cesar Ruiz, even though Cesar Ruiz has struggled, in my opinion, over the last couple of years, he is still your familiar right guard. He is not playing in the game either. They're also down their backup center in Shane Lemieux. Like, he was not available either. So you're starting Nick Saldiveri, Connor McGovern played in this game. Lucas Patrick had to move from center to left guard because things were not going well. And then who's the other offensive lineman? I think I had this. No, those are the ones that they rotated with. It was Landon Young. Landon Young was the other one. Landon Young, Nick Saldiveri, Connor McGovern were like the new ones that. And when you go into this game, it's like, this couldn't be a worse matchup for you. Now that the fact that Aaron Donald is no longer in the league, basically this is the worst matchup for you. You're playing musical chairs down multiple starting and even backup interior offensive linemen going up against Chris Jones, and specifically Steve Spagnuolo, who is not afraid to dial up inside pressure in a lot of different ways to really confuse you, whether you have a healthy offensive line or not. So there were multiple instances last night where I almost watched what Carr was doing, and it's like, Dude, I don't even know what you would have done here. Now, you obviously point out a couple of instances where he had some hot throws that he needs to kind of focus in on there more. Through the first couple of weeks of the season, they were hitting pretty well deep down the field, so he's looking in that direction first and foremost because the offense is playing well. You know, you got to hit a couple of those big shots to win in Kansas City, so that's where his eyes were going. But when you lose as quickly as a lot of the Saints offensive linemen lost last night, up the middle, straight up the middle, either against the guard or the center, it's really hard to navigate the pocket there. I also think a lot of people are going to point out the fact that, hey, PFF, you guys have Derek Carr as the number one graded quarterback under pressure. And we do. 79.1 grade under pressure so far this season. Even last night, it wasn't so bad against pressure. And yeah, when you look at those numbers right on the screen, you could see it there. Against the Chiefs, he was pressured on 15 of his 30 dropbacks. He was 8 for 18, 88 yards, 2 big-time throws, and that one turnover where he played was the very first one where he was pressured and he just chucks it up, and it's intercepted by Brian Cook. Even if you say, like, okay, I'm rolling my eyes at PFF having him as the number one graded passer under pressure, I even put QBR in there. He's 8th in QBR when it comes to under pressure. But you and I were chatting a little bit before the show, and we were kind of talking about this and how a lot of that is now propped up by the first 2 weeks of the season. He had an elite PFF passing grade against the Cardinals the Carolina Panthers in week 1, and then the Dallas Cowboys in week 2. And to be honest with you, I think it was like 6 or 7 total times that he was pressured within those first 2 games anyways. So it's not like he was pressured a lot. He was pressured 15 times last night. He was pressured 14 times against the Atlanta Falcons. He was pressured 12 times against the Philadelphia Eagles. And then, yeah, when you look at the Cowboys and the Panthers, it was 8 times total. I'm looking at it now. It was 5 against the Cowboys and 3 against the Panthers. So not only is it a small sample size, it's just not good defenses that he was going up against there. So I thought I was going to kind of come into the show talking about, okay, I'm going to defend Derek Carr a little bit here, but there is more context as to maybe it is less of a defense, and maybe it is more of a, hey, you should kind of be a little bit worried, or at least not as bullish on Derek Carr within this offense as you were for the first 2 weeks of the season, because clearly the Cowboys defense and the Carolina Panthers defense aren't the right barometers for you to have for you to kind of project who he's going to be against most opponents in the NFL.
But I think this is my big issue is, yes, we can make excuses when they play against, the last 3 weeks. You have Jalen Carter, you have Chris Jones last night, you even have David Onyemata for the Falcons, who's probably an underrated, 3-tech interior defensive lineman.
Yep, I agree.
Who also had a ton of pressures against the Saints in that game. The biggest issue is, like, if every time again, it goes back to fragility. Like, if every time there's an injury at guard or there's an injury at tackle, the quarterback can't make this work, you're not going to win it. You're not going to win 4 games in the playoffs,
right?
Which is the ultimate goal,
right.
So again, I go back to, like, you tied yourself to this quarterback. You gave him a big contract. You tied him to all this dead cap money that you can't really move him. Maybe after this season, I don't remember I definitely not after last season. But so you're like, this is the issue. Whereas, like, there are quarterbacks out there. I'm not saying there are many of them, but there are quarterbacks out there who can make this thing work when there is less great pieces in front of him. And Derek Carr has never been that type of quarterback, save for these spurts where we fall in love with him because he'll have like 3 games in a row where he looks really good, 4 games in a row, and then he goes back to what Derek Carr is. So I think that's really the issue here, where it's like, yeah, I mean, I'm not saying that you want to live a whole season with that O-line you mentioned, with Eric McCoy, a top 3 center in the league.
Mm-hmm.
But at some point, like, there's going to be a conversation we have to have where, when anything is not perfect for Derek Carr, we can't win football games, so we can't move the football. That's kind of where I am with this, and like I said, you can look at it and make excuses, and I do this. I make excuses for every quarterback when I watch the film, because it's really hard to play quarterback. I understand that, but it seems like there's enough guys out there who want to play quarterback in a way where I can be the guy who deals with these type of bad situations, and I just don't think Derek Carr is that quarterback.
They host the Tampa Bay Buccaneers next, who Vita Vea, maybe Clyde Cansey. Cansey hasn't played yet this season, but we'll see. Interior pressure there. There's potential. Then they host the Broncos after that. The Broncos defensive line's playing well. Zach Allen's playing really well specifically. It's the Chargers. After that, they travel out to L.A. to play the Chargers. Then they travel to play the Panthers again, so that should be an easy one. Falcons obviously gave me a little bit of fits, but then you go Browns, Rams, Giants defensive line, Commanders interior defensive line. So this is definitely something where the reason why I rattle all these off, and it could look a lot different, 5 weeks from now, we'll see. But McCoy out for the year, correct? I think he's out for the year, or at least
it's at least like 8 games or something.
Yeah, okay. So he's out for a while. Ruiz obviously being out doesn't help. If this interior offensive line does not get better as a group, Carr simply has to play better because the schedule is you're going to face a decent amount of interior pressure anyways. So he was great under pressure through the first couple of weeks, but I think that there is more evidence to, okay, maybe he is not like a top 3, top 5 passer under pressure. You're hoping he's better than he has been in the past. Is middle of the pack, is that good enough here for this team? Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. But I think this was a very interesting up and down 5 weeks for this team where some people are going to look at the analysis for Derek Carr and simply say, like, hey, the offensive lines, you just can't get over it. And I could say, like, all right, like, I understand. Like, it's a crappy part of this. Again, not only are you down multiple starters, you're down some backups as well. You're playing third stringers in there. And so anytime that's the case, it's not great. But the great quarterbacks, the ones that win Super Bowls, the one that win the playoffs, they do find a way somehow. And they are less fragile to things like that happening. And this will certainly be a telltale sign of whether or not Derek Carr could be that. I think there is an out after his contract. They have quite a bit of dead money attached to him over the next 2 years. But I believe that the guaranteed money that is left on his deal versus how much his cap shoots up to, because I think it shoots up to about $51 million for next season, that is about even, the dead money that you would take in the cap space. So if you wanted to move on from Derek Carr, it's basically a wash. Like, yeah, it's $50 million dead cap, but you would have had $50 million on the cap anyways if he were on the team. So it's kind of a wash either way. It's not like it's way more dead money than it would be the other way around. So this is a big year. All I'm saying, I'm not saying that they're going to cut him for sure. Obviously, like I said, he had a good couple of games to start the season. We'll see these next couple of games as they try to rally back from losing 3 straight, but this is still a major evaluation for Derek Carr and whether or not they want to allocate the next 2 years of their team to him since they really start to have an out after this season. So I want to talk about Josh Allen because he is somebody who's talking about under pressure and that kinds of stuff. I want to get into it because it was the most non-Josh Allen game maybe that we've seen over the last 3 years. But before we get to that, whether it's a touchdown, a tutty, taking it to the house, in for 6, whatever you want to call touchdowns, that one thing is for sure. Touchdowns matter more at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL. In the ground, on the air, special teams, defense, whatever. We don't care. We don't care how they score them. We just want to bet on touchdowns. DraftKings Sportsbook is the #1 place to bet on touchdowns. If you're ready to place your first bet, try betting on something simple, like a player to score a touchdown. Maybe you think that we're crazy, right? Maybe you're listening to this podcast and you think that we're giant haters, and Derek Carr is absolutely about to go off. He's about to throw for 5 touchdowns this upcoming week. Well, throw some cheddar on the line. Make yourself some money. Say who's going to score a touchdown. There you go. It's easy. If you're a new DraftKings customer, you can bet just $5 on any player to score a touchdown, and you get 200 in bonus bets instantly. There we go. Score big with DraftKings Sportsbook, the #1 place to bet on touchdowns. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now. Use the promo code PFF. That's promo code PFF for new customers to get 200 in bonus bets when they bet just $5. Only DraftKings Sportsbook. The crown is yours. If you got a gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or just text HOPE-NY. In Connecticut, help is available for problems with gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly on behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort in Kansas. 21 plus age and eligibility varies by jurisdiction. Void in Ontario. Bonus bets do expire 168 hours after issuance. For additional terms and responsible gambling resources, visit dkng.co/FTBALL. So the Buffalo Bills lose this past week to the Houston Texans. Obviously, the way that they lost is a topic that we're not going to get to here on this show with how McDermott sort of went about the final drive of that game, still allowing the Houston Texans to get into field goal range, losing by 3. But the Josh Allen conversation is an interesting one. I don't know how much there's actually going to be a takeaway from this. I'm just curious to sort of break down the performance and what was Josh Allen's day. 37.7 passing grade for Josh Allen. And when you talk about how difficult it was for him, the team only had an open target on 11 of the 26 targets they were given to his wide receivers. And I think that goes into these other statistics that I'm about to bring up. Josh Allen under pressure. He had 15 dropbacks under pressure against the Houston Texans, 13 passing attempts under pressure, 0 completions. That's nuts. This is one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL at playing under pressure and extending the plays and getting to the sideline and having these crazy completions. 0 on 13 attempts when he was pressured. And he has those true turnover-worthy plays as well. 26.3 passing grade, which was the third lowest single-game performance under pressure that he has had since 2021. Seth, I want to hear what you have to say about this, but it feels like, especially with the low open target percentage, that with Khalil Shakir not in this lineup, he just didn't trust his receivers. And it felt like he was a little off here and there. They didn't have that chemistry, and he just did not trust those dudes when he was under pressure. What did you think?
I think so. Something we talked about a few weeks ago when we were going crazy about this Bills offense and how good it was. One of the things we said was, hey, early in games, they're blitzing teams with like great game plans from Joe Brady. Like they're coming out and they're using the defense's kind of strengths against them. They know what the defense is going to be in. They're calling plays that are perfect for those situations. And you get up to a lead, and then there's kind of a snowball effect. What you've seen the last 2 weeks, and especially this week against Houston, is they're trying to do the same stuff. So if you watch the first 5-6 passes, 2 or 3 drives of this game, you see a lot of quote unquote designer concepts where they're like really double moves, really trying to free up one guy, and that guy's not getting freed up. Now they did get Mac Hollins deep, and there's a miss there on a double move. That was a really nice play call. But for the most part, like these guys aren't getting separation. And then you're starting to get into a situation where you're under pressure a lot. So I think it's a different under pressure than like a Derek Carr where there was a quick pressure because, the offensive line wasn't very good. I don't think the offensive line was that. I mean, they allowed some pressure, but I don't think it was like that bad. It was more like, hey, I have to hold on to this football because the receivers aren't open at the end of my drop back, and then I have to go make a play. Now, Josh Allen will make those plays more likely than not. This is probably an aberration. I would assume, given what we've seen in the career of Josh Allen.
Right.
But it was bad, right? Like all of a sudden, like the accuracy when he's moving out of the pocket, when he's under pressure, was not the accuracy, the arm strength that we normally see with Josh Allen. So that was a little concerning. It is a good defense. There's some good players on this defense when it comes to the Houston Texans. But I think at the end of the day, this is like you said, the open targets are not there unless they're really schemed up or Josh Allen is putting the ball in a great spot without Khalil Shakir, who probably goes underrated in this league. You had like the one Keon Coleman play where he catches a ball on the sideline and then turns and runs for another 40 yards or whatever for a touchdown. But you're not getting consistency out of that. You're not getting consistency out of Dalton Kincaid. Those are your top picks at receiver, at pass catcher the last 2 years. And so it's like eventually they were going to have some bad games against defenses that kind of play in a similar type of way in Houston and Baltimore, especially compared to when we saw them on Monday night against the Jacksonville team that's completely different structurally. So this was always going to be a chance that this was going to be an issue. I certainly didn't expect it because I thought Josh Allen would just be amazing every game. I think Josh Allen's going to be amazing every game, but certainly not the case. And think they'll figure it out. But yeah, like this is not it's a mid-tier receiving pass catching group with Khalil Shakir, and that's probably enough going forward, but it's not a mid-tier, it's below mid-tier when you don't have Khalil Shakir. And that to me is probably the issues going forward.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at it now just for the entire season. the Bills have the least amount of open receivers throughout the season. It's just a lot of tight coverage stuff. And with Khalil Shakir out of this lineup, they were lacking that player that I feel like Allen could have gone to create that separation. But I don't say all that to just like make excuses for Josh Allen. Like I also think that even with those tight window throws, like he should be able to hit more than 0, right? I think that was a little bit of an outlier of a performance from him. But again, it just felt like when he was attempting those tight passes, it was just a little off one way or the other. A little to the right, a little too far, a little to the left, whatever it was. And he just didn't have that elite chemistry with one of those wide receivers that was not Khalil Shakir yet. So it's something where, yeah, they draft Keon Coleman early last year. Yeah, they're hoping that Dalton Kincaid emerges in an even bigger way moving forward. Maybe another big splash at wide receiver is not off the table for this team going into next year, depending on where they're at. So that's sort of what I thought about it, because Allen was also 0 for 6 on passes of 20 or more yards down the field. He was 1 for 14 on passes of just 10 yards or more. So it wasn't even the under pressure stuff. It was just a crazy off day for basically the entire Bills passing offense. And it's hard to have too many definitive takeaways from this one, but it's just, I think that you're right. I think it's one of those situations where the offense needed somebody to show up and they weren't able to, and Josh Allen just wasn't able to be superhuman there. But I don't know. Do you think they have enough at receiver? Like if Khalil Shakir comes back into this, do you think they have enough, or do you think they are still sorely missing a Stephon Diggs type of a player? And I know that might be a duh, because Stephon Diggs is one of the best wide receivers in the NFL, but like a player that is that caliber of a separation artist, do you think that guy's on the team or not?
Probably not. And I look at some of these throws that ended up going to like Mac Hollins, for example, that probably were, designed in other weeks to go to Shakir. And like something we talked about 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago was this offense is very like what I call, well, not just me, but what we'd call a pure progression offense. So he's going to start on one side of the field and he's going to move his eyes to routes. If he doesn't like the routes, let's say on the left, he's going to move his eyes back to the right, and those routes are going to come into his vision. And he's hit Khalil on a ton of those routes this season. Now you have Mac Hollins running those routes, and they're just like the connection wasn't there. And some of that's on Allen for sure. Like there were some low throws and stuff, and whatever issues there were with his accuracy and stuff, like you said, I mean, it wasn't good. I would expect, given who he is, like I'll expect him to figure this out. But a lot of those type of plays that were going to Khalil Shakir, and like I'm not trying to put this whole thing on Shakir, but at the same time, he is their best receiver, pass catcher, period. And it does seem like it's by some distance, right? Like I don't think I'm alone in saying that. So when you have that, and then you have, besides the fact that plays that he can make you over the middle of the field, which they were severely lacking in this game, is he can make a screen catch go for extra yardage. He can make those kind of short passes go for extra yardage too. And you take that out, and everything is a little off for Josh Allen, like you talked about, and this whole thing collapses. The whole thing collapses. I'm still shocked. I didn't think it would collapse that much, because again, he's such a good quarterback. But that seems like what's happened. I'll still like say that he will still be in the MVP race.
Oh, of course. Yeah.
But for sure, it's interesting. That's all I'll say. It's interesting.
I got to think that just like we have over the last couple of years, anytime that Josh Allen has had like a crazy low performance like this, it will be an outlier when we look back at it. And so this is less of a Josh Allen thing. I know there's a quarterback conversation, so we were talking about Josh Allen. To me, it's less about Josh Allen himself and more about the chemistry with his receivers, to where if you were going to have a lot of tight coverage stuff, it's just got to be A1, and this past week it wasn't A1. And all that to say, obviously, they had a chance to win the game, right? They don't collapse there in the last minute of the game, and you're probably going to overtime. Maybe they end up winning this game, and we look at it and we go, wow, Josh Allen, look at him. He can win ugly as well. So I think that I'm not saying that it was terrible, but I do think that there is something to not having Khalil Shakir in this game and how the passing game looked because of it. So I think that that's just a little bit of a takeaway that we can monitor moving forward. I do want to talk about Aaron Rodgers and his performance on Sunday morning in London going up against the Minnesota Vikings. But before we get to that, this podcast is brought to you by Cherry Bundy, the performance drink that is fueling the Healthlete revolution. I'm not going to lie. I tried this for the first time last week when they sent us some stuff. And I'm looking at my producer. I take one sip of it, and I look at him and I was like, all right, how are they doing this? How are they doing this stuff? It's tart cherry, which has got, it's no added sugars. It's great ingredients. It's super high in antioxidants, anti-inflammatory. It's got all sorts of different benefits. It can reduce soreness. It can help recovery, help support immunity. It can improve your sleep, all the kind of stuff. And it tastes really great. Tart cherry can sometimes be like really tart, as its name is. Sometimes it can be too sour, and I'm not even a guy who likes sour stuff. But I took 2 sips of this thing, and I'm like, all right, they're working their magic over here. This stuff is fantastic. So I can absolutely understand why they are used by nearly 500 collegiate programs and professional sports team, every single NFL team, 10 or less, 11 Super Bowl champions. 66 out of 67 Power 4 conference football teams use them. That one lone team that's holding out, you got to get on the train. I guarantee it's going to help you because this product's awesome. It's available on Amazon and cherrybundy.com, retailers nationwide as well, like Publix, Kroger, all that good stuff. So check him out. Cherry Bundy, I was pleasantly surprised when I tried out their product, and I'm going to be using it now moving forward anytime that I'm trying to recover from something like a big workout or something like that. So you guys should too. You guys should too. Check it out, cherrybundy.com. Aaron Rodgers and the Jets, 23-17 was the final in this one against the Vikings. Obviously, the final score was close. Obviously, we were kind of all watching until the end, but Vikings started this game off 17-0, and it just looked like a very frustrating day at the office once again for the passing game specifically. Aaron Rodgers dropped back 54 times in this game. He was 29 for 54, 244 yards passing, 2 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. He had 3 big-time throws, but 4 turnover-worthy plays, 68.8 adjusted completion percentage, and a time to throw continues to be incredibly quick from Aaron Rodgers. It's like he is just reading everything pre-snap, and that ball is getting out of his hands immediately. 2.37 seconds, really fast against the Vikings. What do we think about Rodgers? Because, Seth, when I watch the Jets offense, especially the passing game, and there's some offensive line things that we can get into here, but it just looks so difficult. It looks like it's just the highest degree of difficulty passes on every single pass. It's the smallest area of separation. It's the smallest throwing window. And all of those plus, like, wow, look at Aaron Rodgers, one of the best back shoulder passers, one of the most precise ball placement quarterbacks that we've ever seen. It's like you're asking him to do that not a handful of times to be the X factor of a game. It's like you're asking him to do that every series, every time he goes out there. And to me, it's just that's not a recipe that's going to win you enough football games to make it into the playoffs or make a deep run into the playoffs. But what do you think when you're watching Rodgers?
This is the game that pissed me off the most.
More than the Saints game?
Because
really?
I think I couldn't. I was shocked when I watched what they were. Well, because I like watching, like you talked about, like Aaron Rodgers is such a fun quarterback to watch because of the throwing mechanics and the ball speed and the degree of difficulty that he can make on some throws is amazing, right? But when we saw the difference when they went from Mike McCarthy and the simplistic nature of that offense to Matt LaFleur, who was scheming stuff up to pair with Aaron Rodgers' incredible ability, that's when we saw the 2 MVPs. And now we're going back to that type of simplistic offense where basically your quarterback is your offensive coordinator. That's what it feels like. But he's 6 years older, coming off an Achilles injury. And like that's not fair to this whole offense to put it on him like that. That's why he was so good in Green Bay at the end there, or with when they went to LaFleur. The Minnesota Vikings are a defense that is like a haymaker type of defense. They're going to throw you a haymaker, and you got to respond with a haymaker. And they obviously the Jets did not respond with a haymaker, but we've seen teams actually have success. Now you're going to get blitzed, you're going to take some sacks. There's going to be some negative plays, but also there's massive ability for you to make plays against this defense. And we've seen teams against this all-out blitz style that Brian Flores comes with have plans in the game plan, like unique things in the game plan. And for the Jets not to look at those answers, I'm shocked. Like, I don't know what the fuck they were doing the whole week in prep for this game. And you saw it on the pick six. You can't like, oh man. When the Vikings give you that all-out pressure look, yes, sometimes they will drop a lot of guys out of it, but basically they are coming with pressure. They are always going to have one more guy than you can block, and it's usually going to be to the running back side. It's usually going to be Harrison Smith. They're going to drop a guy out depending on where the O-line goes to. So if the general rule is if the O-line comes to you, you drop. And they've kind of changed it up a bit this year. It's basically if the O-line comes to Van Ginkel, he will drop and the other guys will still rush. But the main point is, if a guy is dropping from the interior, you can't just throw slants and hot routes against it. That's the whole point. Like, they want you to throw hot against it. Against the corners are going to be off. The safeties who are covering the let's say the four receivers out there are going to be off at like 8 to 10 yards. They're going to jump every slant, but they're going to have help because if you look at the slant, some guy, Andrew Van Ginkel, is going to drop underneath that slant route. How the Jets decided this was going to be their plan on the first two times they saw this blitz in the game is bonkers. I cannot believe that they didn't have a plan for this type of blitz that Brian Flores has been showing for 5 years, 10 years. I don't even know how long. Since he was the Patriots defensive coordinator. Like, this is what happens. They're very talented. Aaron Rodgers is talented. Garrett Wilson is talented. I think that Mike Williams will show his talent eventually coming off the injury. The O-line is talented, though they haven't played very well. But if you don't pair it with a plan, and especially a plan against such a unique defense that, again, teams have shown the ability to deal with this type of pressure, what the fuck are we doing? Like, I'm lost. I just cannot believe that was their game plan against a Vikings defense like that. And then you saw a little bit later, Harrison Smith gets an unblocked free pressure on the same blitz. Like I said, he's always going to be the free rusher, but they didn't have an answer for it. It's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. And this is what happens when you pair Hackett with Aaron Rodgers.
Well, glad we're talking about the Jets. This is incredible timing because as you were in the middle of your rant right there, the New York Jets just fired Robert Saleh. So he is the first head coach fired, which is, I'm not going to lie, I did not see that coming. It hasn't looked great from the Jets. Like the energy, the body language, everything. It's always looked so stressful and tough there. So I can understand us trending in this direction, but I did not think he was going to be the first head coach fired. So I don't know, man. Is Hackett going to take over now as like interim head coach? Because the offense feels like it's got a Hackett problem too. So, maybe Aaron Rodgers will just take over as head coach. Like quarterback head coach. We'll let him run everything. It feels like he kind of already is. But man, I don't know. Any thoughts to Robert Saleh getting fired? And then obviously we can kind of finish up and wrap up the Jets conversation with Rodgers.
Well, he the second he called out Rodgers for like the pre-snap and cadence stuff a few weeks ago, it was over. Like, you don't do that with Rodgers. There was clearly a disconnect there between him and his quarterback. I'm shocked because, again, like, we talked about it with Dennis Allen before, but like, this is a guy who's put together great defenses. Now they've drafted well. They've had some, you get a great corner early in the draft, like it helps and stuff, but like, the defensive side is perfect, almost, right? Like, they're so good on defense. but you tied yourself to this quarterback offensive coordinator combination that clearly hasn't worked, but you take the fall for it. And I would even say, like, with Dennis Allen, it's very clear that he is the one who pushed for Derek Carr because of their relationship. Like, I don't know. I mean, obviously, if you're Robert Saleh 2 years ago, you're pushing for a Hall of Fame quarterback to come your way. But at the same time, like, this is obviously partly a Woody Johnson thing or a Joe Douglas thing. And then Robert Saleh is the one who's going to take the fall for it when he's been really good at what he's his main job, in my opinion, which is like the defensive side of things. We don't know what happens culturally in a room, so I won't speak on whether the culture was there, whether like it was good times for everyone, whatever. But the defense has been really good, and the offense that you're letting, what do you like? There's nothing that Saleh can do about this offense. You could, he talked about, hey, I'm going to be in all the quarterback meeting rooms. And Rodgers said, yeah, he's given us some good pointers on defense, blah, blah, blah. But really, this is Rodgers' Hackett offense. It's really just a Rodgers offense. So what the fuck does Robert Saleh have to do with how this offense is? But if if the quarterback and it's Aaron Rodgers doesn't like you, and I get this feeling that Aaron Rodgers and Woody Johnson are probably tight, given they probably have similar political views.
Well, like, I said this on the PFF grades release show earlier this week. Everything seems so tight with this team right now. They're not having fun. They look like it's an extremely difficult job, and they look like they're all playing so under pressure. The body language is bad. Dalton did a really good job of going back, and he's like, this team's never good out of the gate. They're never good right out of the gate. They're never ready to play ball games. They're never loose. They're always so tight. Everything is so tight. The margin for error is so low. And I think about, I don't know if you caught this, but Baker Mayfield was on a show, podcast, I can't remember, and he was talking about how the players have sort of told him that the energy was different with him and with Brady. And obviously, like, they won with Brady, but he said the Brady energy when he came into Tampa Bay was much like Michael Jordan when everybody watched The Last Dance, where Michael Jordan was like, I was going to push you. Like, I'm going to be a leader. I'm going to do what I need to do to be a leader. I'm not always going to be your best friend. Like, I'm not always going to be nice, but we're going to win championships. And Tom Brady sort of had that exact same mindset, it sounded like. And they won a championship because of it. And Baker, now they're winning in a different way. They're winning because it's more loose. Like, it's just they're all like such close friends, and it's a much more loose and fun and free environment. And that's also, creating sort of a winning culture in Tampa Bay. With Rodgers, and I don't know, maybe like Saleh's presence kind of goes into this a little bit, but with the Jets, over the last 2 years specifically, but less last year because he wasn't playing, more so this year, it just looks like everybody is playing, especially on offense, like they don't want to blow it. They're not playing to play well. They're not playing fun. They're not playing fast or free. They're like, I can't blow it. I can't blow it for Aaron. I can't be the guy who screws up for Aaron, or I'm going to get yelled at, or they're going to trade me or something like that. And it is still a head coach's job to not let that sort of environment exist. And in my opinion, it's not a completely outsider's opinion, it just did not feel like Saleh was doing that. Defensive side of the football, Jets been great over the last couple of years. Like you mentioned, what his bread and butter is, he was good at it. But being a head coach, I have certainly learned in this league, it's much more of being a CEO than it is any sort of expertise on one side of the ball or the other. Some guys are great at being able to juggle all those things, but first and foremost, you have to be a CEO. You have to be the leader. You have to have an attitude and an environment that guys love to play their best in. And it did not feel like the Jets had that. And I think that bleeds into the conversation that we just had about the offense, where even before the news of Saleh getting fired, we set this up of like, it all looks so difficult. They're just attempting the most difficult plays in the game. And I was going to say, because I said this on the Monday show as well, I'm not saying this to be hot takey. If Davante Adams is on this football team, they probably win that game against the Vikings because they convert more third downs and they actually get to complete some of those incredibly difficult passes that they want to have because Rodgers actually has the chemistry with Adams, who can be one of the best wide receivers in the NFL. If you're going to continue to play this style of offense, like if Aaron and Nathaniel Hackett go, nope, nothing's wrong, we just need to execute it better, you better go trade for Davante Adams. Because you're not going to make the playoffs if you try to play this offense the way that it's currently constructed without Davante. So I also have that. And I'm not saying that take to be like hot takey and try to get it put on a graphic and blow up or whatever. I mean it. If you're going to play this style of offense, you better go get Davante Adams because you don't have the horses to win this race playing this kind of offense. You don't. So that's sort of my thought of the Jets as well.
So Jeff Ulbrich is going to be the interim head coach. He was a defensive coordinator.
Gotcha.
So, I mean, that kind of makes sense. I mean, they couldn't make Hackett the interim head coach given what happened with him in Denver. There's no chance that was ever going to happen. But, yeah, I mean, I'm in agreement. Like, they play tight. And I think a lot of that is on – there's two things. A, it's like this tightness of like, hey, we got to be perfect on every play. And then B, it's like, well, we don't get any designed schemed open receivers. So we're starting the game from a deficit. And yeah, I mean, I don't think this changes anything. What is different now that Saleh is out of the building? Again, if you're right about like culturally, like they were all tense and Saleh was the reason. I'm not, sorry, you didn't really say that, so I apologize. But like if the reason is that they were tense because Saleh was in the building and they weren't winning games and it was bad and the vibes were bad, then yeah, like better vibes are going to help a team for sure.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, like what's changed? They're going to run the same defense, and the defense was already good. They're going to run the same offense. So I don't Robert Saleh was not part of the offensive game plan stuff. So what's really going to change here? Like I said, I think this is just a power play move by Aaron Rodgers, most likely. And it's too bad. It's really too bad.
You know, I think that obviously like Rodgers' voice is going to mean a lot in this decision because it's just going to overall. You brought him in for that reason. But it's not like Saleh had the resume to fight against it, right? At this point in time. It's right. Not like Saleh's resume with the Jets. It was good enough to where like when Rodgers goes, hey, I don't like how this guy's leading the team, there's not really a lot for him outside of the defense playing well, which is like, okay, you bring in Jeff Ulbrich, and, you know, I'm reading some of the tweets from the beat reporters, like Jeff Ulbrich, highly respected by the players, loved by the players. So maybe that is simply it. They're trying to keep the defense the same, get a different guy in there. What?
Well, just like Robert Saleh, when he gets the job, was highly respected by his 49ers. You know what I mean? Like that's not the issue, right? Like the issue isn't like
sure, yeah. Back to the offense and the Rodgers thing.
The issue is good. It's like it's not even necessarily Rodgers play on the field per se. The issue is Rodgers in terms of everything that he brings to this organization. Mm-hmm. The vibes are horrifying.
We'll see. Perhaps they're one Davante Adams trade away from all of those vibes changing. But again, if you want to play this style of offense, I don't. Maybe it completely changes. I'm a skeptic as to whether it changes long-term and it's sustainable without getting a player who can absolutely win one-on-one ISO ball at the sideline the way that you want to, the way that Davante Adams does. So we shall see. What?
Oh, man. No, it's bad. Like the vibes are horrible right now.
Well, they're trying to change it. They're trying to change things, all right? They're getting a new head coach in there. Jeff Ulbrich's in there. The vibes are great. We're back. The Jets are back. Okay, I don't know about that.
Hey, look. Jets Bills Monday Night Football next week. Like it's
Monday Night Football next week.
Crazy.
Oh my gosh. Maybe this is an inside job by the NFL to get the ratings up for Monday Night Football. Could have been. Who's to say? Thanks, everybody, for watching and listening to the show. Had a little bit of breaking news, broke down a little quarterback stuff. If you want to check out all the premium stats that we talked about here on this show, you can do so by going to PFF.com, getting yourself a PFF Plus subscription. I'm Trevor Sikkema. That's Seth Galina. Thank you guys so much for watching and listening to the PFF NFL show, the quarterback showcase. We'll be back for you right here, once again, same time next week.